Red pill.
The champagne flute hovers at my lips, untouched. To new beginnings, and old secrets, the best man announces, his glass raised, grinning like he owns the moment. My laugh is forced, dry, but no one notices. Not with the camera flashes firing off like a strobe behind me. The photographer is everywhere, kneeling, crouching, snapping. He's good, I'll give him that. His shots will probably look candid, natural, like none of us noticed him there. But I notice. He angles his lens up toward the bride and groom, and for just a second, the dimmed reception light catches on his arm. A tattoo snakes out from beneath the cuff of his rolled-up shirt. Black ink. Familiar. My stomach tightens. I've seen that tattoo before. 3 months ago, in one of my wife's selfies. A photo from her girls' trip to New Orleans. She'd been at a bar, arms slung casually over a girlfriend's shoulder. Same ink, same damn shape. A snake coiled around a broken hourglass. I'd asked her about it at the time. She said it was just a random guy at the bar. A random guy at the bar, who's now at my cousin's wedding. Behind the camera. I scan the room, looking for her. My wife's at the far side of the dance floor, fingers gripping a champagne glass tight as she talks to the bride. I take a step toward her, but something freezes me. The photographer shifts positions again, kneeling this time to capture the groom with his arm around his mom. There's something else. I squint. His camera strap. It's reinforced with custom grips, high-end stuff. Only pros or serious hobbyists bother with gear like that. My buddy Paul, ex-army, the guy who taught me how to field strip a rifle blindfolded, has been talking about buying one just like it. He got into photography last year. Now he won't shut up about depth of field and aperture priority, like it's the only thing keeping him sane since the service. Last week, Paul asked me out of the blue if I knew anyone in professional photography. I told him no. That was the truth. But what if it wasn't just a random question? I turn back to the dance floor. The groom is stiff as a board during the mother-son dance. His hands hover awkwardly over his mom's back. She keeps smiling, but there's a tension between them. Like something's been left unsaid. The photographer snaps another shot, his shutter clicking rapidly. I move closer, weaving through the crowd, the sound of clinking glasses and laughter blurring around me. He doesn't see me coming. His attention is locked on his camera, adjusting settings with smooth precision. The light meter in his viewfinder flashes, and he adjusts again. Closer now. His face is partially hidden behind the camera. I study him. His jawline, the curve of his ear, the angle of his shoulders. Something itches at the back of my brain, like a memory just out of reach. Finally, he lowers the camera. My eyes drop to his hands. One of them is gloved. Black, form-fitting. Weird. The room isn't cold. His other hand isn't covered. Then I see it. The edge of the glove on his right hand shifts as he adjusts his lens. Beneath it, his fingertip is missing. I remember the story. My wife told me years ago about a guy she knew in college. Some accident, shop class, I think she said. She joked about how he always wore gloves to hide it because he was self-conscious. I glance back at her across the room. She's laughing now, her hand brushing lightly against the bride's arm. Carefree. Too carefree. The photographer raises his camera again, aiming for a wide shot of the crowd. His lens glints briefly, catching the light like a secret daring me to uncover it. The party winds down slowly. Guests peel off in pairs and small groups, but I stick to the edges of the room, sipping a whiskey I don't taste, watching. My wife laughs too easily, too loudly, as she mingles near the bar. The photographer packs his gear with methodical precision, slotting lenses into a heavy-duty Pelican case. His glove, that damn glove, catches the light again, and my mind spirals. Paul sidles up to me, tucks jacket loose, tie shoved into his pocket. His hand barely grazes the back of his chair as he sits, just enough for me to see the SIG sour holstered under his jacket. The tux doesn't hide much, not if you know what to look for. "You good?" he asks, his voice low. I shake my head. Not even close. He follows my gaze to the photographer. Still on about him? I nod. Something's off. I need a favor. Paul doesn't ask for details. He never does. I hand him my phone, and he opens the facial recognition app he's been bragging about. We use it in silence, like we're back in Afghanistan scanning for heat signatures. Hold him in place, Paul mutters. The app churns for a few seconds before pinging. A grainy image of the photographer flashes on the screen, a mugshot from 5 years ago. Name, Lucas Barnett. Alias, Lucas Avery. Charges, burglary, trespassing, suspected armed robbery. No convictions. Paul frowns. Career shadow player. You sure you know this guy? I don't answer. My brain pieces together the fragments, my wife's tattoo selfie, the glove, his presence here. Paul snaps his fingers. You're going to want to see this. He pulls out his phone and shows me drone footage he'd taken weeks ago when he was testing new equipment at my fishing cabin. The footage starts smooth, a bird's-eye sweep of the property. Then it jerks. There's movement on the ground. He pauses the video. Who the hell is that? I whisper. The figure is distant but unmistakable. Lucas. Camera bag slung over his shoulder, gloved hand reaching for the side window of my cabin. I thought you knew, Paul says, his tone sharp now. Why didn't you tell me someone was scoping out your place? I didn't know. But now it's all rushing in, a flood of red flags I ignored. The whiskey burns on its way down as I plant myself at the reception table with my laptop. Paul sits beside me, the SIG still visible under his jacket as he scans the room for wandering eyes. I dive into the dark web, hammering search terms and scraping through message boards I swore I'd never visit again. The whiskey dulls the guilt. Finally, I find it. Lucas's so-called portfolio is buried on a site only a paranoid drunk would dig for. Surveillance shots of my life fill the screen. My bank. My gun safe. My goddamn cabin, angle after angle. Dates and timestamps tell me this wasn't casual. He's been watching for months. Paul's jaw tightens when I show him. He's building a profile on you. This isn't amateur work. I grip the table's edge to steady myself. My wife's laughter bubbles across the room again, oblivious. She doesn't see what I see. She doesn't know that the cracks in her story are bleeding into something worse. Paul leans closer. We need to bait the trap with tomorrow's cake cutting. The music slows, the last few guests shuffle toward the exits, and the photographer, Lucas, finishes packing his gear. My eyes haven't left him. Paul stays close, his phone glowing with activity. I approach my wife at the bar. She's pouring another champagne. Too casually. I can see the strain in her shoulders, the tightness in her jaw. She feels the heat, even if she's pretending she doesn't. Having fun? I ask, my tone razor sharp. Her smile falters. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? Maybe because the photographer has a tattoo that matches the one in your girl's trip photos, I say, leaning in. Care to explain that? Her glass trembles. You're being ridiculous. No, I cut her off, lowering my voice. I'm being observant. She laughs, high-pitched and brittle, then takes a step back. But her heel catches on the edge of the bar rug, and her champagne flute slips from her fingers. It shatters on the floor, and before anyone can react, she tries to catch herself, palm down, straight into the shards. Blood wells instantly, a bright red stain blooming across the white silk of her dress. A gasp ripples through the remaining guests, and someone rushes to grab napkins. Let me see, I say, reaching for her hand. She yanks it away. I'm fine, she snaps, teeth clenched. Are you? My voice is low but loaded. Her face hardens. I protected us. Everything I've done was for us. For this family. Protecting us? I echo. That's an interesting word choice. Were you protecting us when you let Lucas into our lives? Or was he just a colleague? She freezes, her lips parting for a split second. I don't, he's just. Don't lie to me, Claire, I interrupt, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. You took vows. You swore loyalty, honesty, but all I hear now are cracks. So I'll help. I promise to cherish you, became, I'll keep secrets from you. And I'll never betray you, turned into this. Her face flushes, and her eyes dart around the room, desperate to find an ally in the thinning crowd. You're paranoid, she hisses, stepping closer, her voice sharp but quiet. Lucas is just a photographer. You're making something out of nothing. My phone buzzes in my pocket. I don't even look at it, Paul's got this under control. But across the room, I catch the groom shifting uneasily at his table. He glances at his Apple Watch, his jaw tightening as the screen lights up. I press closer to Claire. Paranoid, huh? Then explain this. Excuse me. The groom's voice cuts through the noise as he stands, gripping the microphone near the DJ booth. His face is pale, his hands trembling. Mom, he says, his voice shaking but loud enough for everyone left in the room to hear. Who's JT from your burner phone? The tinnitus hums low and steady, a phantom memory clawing its way into the present. I can still smell the burned rubber and hear the metallic groan of twisted steel. The IED had taken 3 of us out that day, 2 forever, and me in pieces that never quite fit back together. Now, standing in my office at 3 a.m., the same hollow ringing fills my ears. But it's not an explosion this time. It's the silence. The suffocating quiet of a marriage I thought I understood unraveling in real time. The bank statements are spread across my desk, pages crumpled and coffee-stained from my sleepless hands. Claire doesn't know I requested them directly from the bank. Too many yoga classes and girls' trips had passed without me questioning where the money came from. Until now. It doesn't take long to find the anomalies. Monthly charges to an RP photography show up like clockwork, always timed within days of her supposed yoga sessions. Smaller charges, too, for things like lunch at a cafe on the other side of town, a cafe I've never been to with her. I open her Signal backup on the decrypted app Paul helped me set up. He insisted I learn how to handle encrypted data years ago, said it might save my life someday. I'm not sure this is what he meant, but here I am. The messages flood in, time-stamped neatly. Lucas, you're sure he doesn't know? Claire, he's too busy. Trust me. Lucas, last week was close. Next time, stick to the plan. Claire, it's handled. Don't overthink it. The timestamps hit me harder than the words. They match her yoga classes perfectly. Every single one. I rub my temples, trying to focus, but the ringing intensifies. My heart races. I grab her Kindle from the bookshelf, the one she always brings to book club. For a second, I hesitate, wondering if this is the moment I cross the line. Then I remind myself, she crossed it first. The GPS logs embedded in the Kindle sync easily. She must not have realized the device tracks location data for content curation. The addresses show a clear pattern, not the library, not her friend Lisa's house. No, these coordinates lead to a short-term rental in a different part of town. The same rental Lucas's portfolio had captured from the inside. I slump into the chair, staring at the blinking cursor on the GPS map. The cigar on the edge of my desk catches my eye, a gift from her for our anniversary last year. To new beginnings, she'd said when she handed it to me. I grab it without thinking, rolling it between my fingers until it cracks, the wrapper splitting, tobacco spilling out like the promises we never kept. The therapy notebooks are the final straw. I dig them out of the drawer where we stashed them after one too many half-hearted counseling sessions. Her handwriting jumps out at me, her commitments and action items, every word now ringing hollow. I carry the pile to the fireplace, my hands trembling as I toss the first one into the flames. The pages curl and blacken. The heat rises, acrid smoke filling the room. It smells like burnt paper and broken trust. But then the smoke alarm blares, a shrill scream over the tinnitus in my ears. The sprinklers kick on, water pouring from the ceiling, soaking the desk, the papers, me. I sit there, drenched and hollowed out, watching the fire sputter and die under the sprinklers. The ringing in my ears fades for just a second, replaced by something colder, clarity. The sprinklers shut off, leaving the office dripping and reeking of burnt paper. I barely have time to process what's happened before the doorbell rings. It's past 4 in the morning. No one comes at this hour with good news. I grab a towel, drying my face as I head to the door. When I open it, a woman in a professional suit stands there, clipboard in hand, her face set in neutral indifference. Beside her is a man I don't recognize, though his build and posture scream security. He's got that stiff, alert stance I know all too well. "Mr. Harris," the woman says briskly, extending the clipboard. "I'm here with a court order." "A court order for what?" I ask, my voice flat, but my hands tighten on the towel. "Your DNA," she replies, unflinching. "Excuse me?" Her tone turns sharp. "It's in relation to an ongoing investigation. You've also been named in a complaint filed with Child Protective Services regarding improper firearm storage in your home." My chest tightens. Gun safe. My mind flickers back to Lucas's surveillance photos, the detailed shots of my safe. They weren't just casing my life, they were setting me up. I glance between the two of them, then at the document. It looks real enough. Embossed stamp, signatures, the works. But something feels off. "I'll need to verify this," I say, stalling. "You're welcome to contact your lawyer," she says with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. But refusal to comply may result in further legal action. They leave me with the paperwork, but the unease lingers long after the door closes. My phone buzzes in my pocket. Paul, again. "Trouble," I say the second I answer. "I'm ahead of you," Paul says. "Remember that footage from your cabin? I did some work on it. Lucas had a lookout, a woman. Same one who just served you?" I glance back toward the door. "Yeah. Thought so. They're baiting you. Time to hit back." Paul's plan unfolds quickly. I load up my laptop, pulling old security footage from my cabin and overlaying a little creative editing. It's subtle, just enough to make it look like Lucas and his assistant tampered with my gun safe themselves. When I send the doctored footage to an anonymous tip line with a fake burner account, it's only step 1. Step 2. Paul activates the network. A loose group of veterans he's worked with for years, some retired, some still in the shadows. They owe him favors, and now they owe me by extension. Within hours, I've got counter-surveillance covering my home, tailing Lucas, and monitoring the assistant's movements. The final move is personal. I dig through Claire's old medical files, ones she thought I'd never look at again. Buried in a folder from her college years, I find the right piece of paper, a diagnosis of infertility. I scan it, tweak the dates, and create fake billing records that make it look like the treatments continued long after we were married. When I slip the fake bills into her office desk drawer, I know it'll be a matter of days before Lucas or the assistant finds them and questions their entire plan. But it's the panic room that seals it. That night, while Claire showers upstairs, I slip into her walk-in closet. The keypad to the panic room is hidden behind her row of neatly hung blouses. I've never seen inside, never had the code. She claimed it was for emergencies only. Paul's friend cracked the code earlier today. 1975, the year her mother was born. The door opens with a soft hiss, and I step inside. It's smaller than I expected, sterile and gray, with shelves of documents and a safe bolted into the wall. I bypass the papers and go straight for the safe. The key Claire keeps hidden behind her jewelry box works perfectly. Inside, I don't find money or passports or even incriminating files. I find my medals. The ones I thought were lost in the chaos of moving. My bronze star, my purple heart, everything I earned, sitting here in her private vault like trophies. The tinnitus returns, louder than ever, as I hear the water shut off upstairs. Why would she keep these? The forensic accountant's report arrives in a plain, nondescript envelope, but it feels like a live grenade in my hands. I lock the office door behind me, sit at my desk, and tear it open. Page after page details transactions I can barely fathom. Hidden offshore accounts in the Caymans. Funds quietly funneled over the last decade, each deposit coinciding with work trips, yoga classes, and other excuses I now see as veils. At the bottom of the summary, a note chills me to the bone. Recipient name, Alana Ruiz. An alias. Claire's alias. I barely register the text notification that pings from Paul. You need to see this, he writes, attaching an image. It's a database pull. One of his veteran buddies managed to dig deep into an FBI cartel file. Her alias, Alana Ruiz, is listed under known associates. My wife, tied to a cartel. I'm about to reply when a shout from upstairs interrupts me. Dad! It's my son. The urgency in his voice pulls me out of the fog. I run upstairs to find him kneeling in his room, the floorboards pried up. He holds a weathered leather-bound journal in his hands, his face pale. I was cleaning out old stuff, he stammers, pointing to his childhood piggy bank beside him. This was under the floor. He shakes the bank, and it rattles unnervingly. I take it from him, popping open the plug at the bottom. Time-stamped hotel keycards spill into my palm. Dozens of them. Each one is labeled with a neat black marker, the date stretching back over 10 years. My throat tightens. I open the journal next. The entries are in Claire's handwriting. At first, they're mundane, grocery lists, reminders. Then they take a darker turn. Names, dates, locations. Meeting notes. Transactions. I don't understand, my son says, his voice trembling. I force myself to stay calm, to pull him into a hug and say, "It's okay, son. I'll handle this." But inside, my world is collapsing. After he leaves, I sit at the desk again, the journal open in front of me, the accountant's report to my left, and Paul's FBI alias file to my right. My hands shake uncontrollably. I grip the edge of the desk to steady them, but it's no use. Then I see it, the small, velvet ring box sitting on the corner of the desk. My son's wedding ring. He gave it to me a week ago, asking me to keep it safe until the big day. I pick it up, rolling it between my fingers, feeling the weight of it. Slowly, the shaking stops. My breathing steadies. I place the box carefully back on the desk and stand. Downstairs, I unlock the gun safe. The .45 ACP feels familiar in my hand, the cold metal grounding me. I reach for the special rounds I keep in the back, hollow points, custom loaded, guaranteed to punch through any defense. By the time I get to the shooting range, the tinnitus is gone. My focus narrows, my hands steady as I load the first round into the chamber. The target downrange is faceless, but it doesn't need a face. I already know who it represents. I draw, aim, and fire. The wedding venue looks different at 3 a.m. The soft candlelight and laughter from earlier have been replaced by eerie silence and shadows stretching across the dance floor. I stand in the middle of the room, my shoulders squared, a wireless earpiece hidden beneath my collar. Paul's voice crackles faintly in my ear. Drones up. No movement outside. You're clear, but stay sharp, he says. I grip the EMP device in my pocket. It's crude but effective, Paul built it for situations just like this. Across the room, the security cameras swivel slowly, scanning for nothing, for now. I move toward the control panel near the bar, take a deep breath, and flip the switch on the device. The low hum of the cameras dies instantly, and the room plunges into technological darkness. The sound of heels clicking on the polished floor pulls my focus. Claire steps out from the shadows, her wedding dress replaced by a sharp pantsuit. In her hand, she holds a folder, the legal documents she's been dangling over my head for weeks. Behind her, Lucas appears, his camera bag slung over his shoulder, looking every bit the professional. But I know better now. You're late, I say, my voice steady. Claire smirks. Had to make sure you were still stupid enough to show up. She waves the folder. I've got everything I need to bury you. Custody, assets, everything. You brought this on yourself. You mean you and Lucas, I say, nodding toward him. He stiffens slightly, his hand brushing his bag. You don't know what you're talking about, Claire snaps. Lucas is just a friend. Right. Just a friend. I pull a sheet of paper from my pocket and hold it up. Or should I say, your brother? Her smirk falters. That's ridiculous. Is it? I counter. Juvie records are a hell of a thing to unseal. But lucky for me, sealed doesn't mean erased. Lucas Barnett, formerly Lucas Daniels. Same Daniels family you were born into before the system split you two up. But you already knew that, didn't you? Her eyes widened for just a second before narrowing again. This is desperate, even for you. Desperate would be me letting this play out without a plan, I reply, holding up another document. Speaking of plans, your blackmail scheme. It's dead. I've got falsified autopsy reports ready to leak, showing exactly how your insurance policies backfired. Lucas moves, his hand dipping into his bag. Paul's voice cuts through my earpiece. He's going for something. Watch him. I turn slightly, keeping Lucas in my peripheral vision. You should know something, Lucas. Claire doesn't care about you. She'll hang you out to dry the second this goes south. Just like she did to me. Shut up. Claire snaps, her voice rising. She steps forward, folder raised like a weapon. And that's when Lucas strikes. He pulls a taser from his bag, the prongs aimed directly at me. But before he can fire, there's a sharp crack overhead. Drone just zapped him, Paul says in my ear. Lucas stumbles, the taser clattering to the floor as a burst of sparks flies from his bag. He looks up, stunned, before retreating toward the shadows. Claire panics, her composure unraveling. She lunges at me, the folder in one hand and her other reaching for something at her waist. But before she can get close, a figure steps out from behind the catering station. Hold it right there. It's the caterer. Only now he's in jeans and a hoodie, his badge glinting in the dim light. Off-duty cop. He moves fast, grabbing Claire's wrist and snapping handcuffs on her before she can react. Nice try, he mutters, forcing her to the ground as she screams obscenities. I step back, breathing hard, as Lucas tries to make a break for the exit. Paul's voice cuts in again. Don't worry. He's not getting far. I've got eyes on him. I look down at Claire, her face twisted with rage as the caterer reads her rights. For the first time in weeks, the tinnitus fades completely. Justice feels quiet. The courtroom is cold, clinical, and silent except for the steady tapping of the judge's pen against the bench. Claire sits across from me, her once pristine confidence reduced to simmering resentment. Her designer suit, a sharp navy number she probably bought with my money, doesn't carry the same power it used to. The judge leans forward, clearing his throat. Mr. Harris, your petition for marital asset redistribution under maritime salvage law is unconventional, to say the least. I stay calm, my attorney handling the response. Your Honor, the principle is clear. Abandoned property on jointly held territory is subject to salvage claims if the other party neglects it. My client's wife left him with the burden of managing all financial assets while secretly funneling funds offshore. By precedent, he's entitled to recover what was abandoned. The judge raises an eyebrow but doesn't dismiss it. It's not the first loophole Claire exploited, it's just the first one I've used better. Claire's glare sharpens, but she doesn't speak. Not yet. She knows her real problem is waiting in my second motion. Regarding the challenge to biological motherhood, my attorney continues, flipping through the DNA analysis we filed last week. The plaintiff's genetic contribution does not match the children. The defendant's secret egg donor arrangement constitutes fraud, invalidating her parental claims. The room falls silent. Even Claire, usually quick to defend herself, is momentarily stunned. Her mouth opens as if to object, but nothing comes out. Across the aisle, Paul smirks faintly, sitting beside the court-approved auctioneer who'll be overseeing the liquidation of her beloved designer collection. Hermes bags, Jimmy Choos, vintage Chanel, all seized under crime proceeds statutes. My son leans in beside me, whispering, "You're really going through with it?" I nod. You bet. It's all going back into the family fund. Or, in this case, your honeymoon fund. Claire's Cayman account, previously hidden behind layers of shell companies, is now front and center in my financial statement. With the court's approval, I'll be using every cent of it to send my son and his bride somewhere warm and luxurious. The irony isn't lost on me. When the judge dismisses the case for deliberation, I hand Claire one last document as the bailiff approaches to escort her out. She snatches it, scanning the text. Her face twists when she realizes what it is, the restraining order I filed last week, printed neatly on the parchment paper from our original wedding invitations. A poetic touch, but one I knew she'd recognize. Good luck, I say softly as she's led away. You'll need it. The courtroom clears out, but my son lingers. He takes a small box out of his pocket, flipping it open to reveal a pair of diamond earrings. Are these really hers? He asks. They were, I reply. Now they're yours to give. Consider them your something borrowed. He shakes his head, amused but not entirely surprised. You thought of everything, didn't you? I shrug, watching as Claire disappears through the double doors, her heels clacking against the tiled floor. The best revenge? I murmur, mostly to myself, as I pick up my things. Watching her realize I learned from the master. The thank you note arrives in a thick envelope, addressed in my son's messy handwriting. Inside is a glossy photo of him and his bride standing on a sunlit beach, their smiles wide and carefree. The note is short but heartfelt. Dad, none of this would have been possible without you. We'll never forget it. Thank you for everything. But it's the photo that holds my attention. The image is almost perfect, until my eyes drift to the background. There, blurred but unmistakable, is a familiar figure. A woman in a sun hat and sunglasses, lingering near the bar. My jaw tightens. Still running, I mutter under my breath, tossing the photo aside. Later that evening, Paul drops by unannounced, carrying a box wrapped in plain brown paper. Figured you could use a laugh, he says, sliding it across the table. Inside is a cheap wood frame, holding a perfectly crafted fake ID with Claire's alias, Alana Ruiz. Beneath it, an engraving reads, World's Okayest Mom. I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. Subtle. Paul grins. Hey, retirement's coming up. Gotta spend the extra time somewhere. When he leaves, I sit alone in the house that feels too quiet now. My tuxedo from the wedding still hangs on the back of the closet door, a relic of a night that feels like it belongs to someone else's life. I pull it down and head outside. The fire pit glows faintly as I toss it in, the fabric catching quickly. The scent of burning wool fills the air, but beneath it, faint and ghostly, I catch something else, her perfume. The one she always wore. For a moment, I'm frozen. The smell wraps around me like a memory I didn't ask for, tugging at emotions I thought I'd burned away with the lies. But then it's gone, nothing left but smoke rising into the cold night air. As I watch the flames die, I think about the lessons I've learned, hard, bitter truths forged through betrayal. I grip the edge of the chair, my voice low as I speak to no one but myself. ROL, reality over love. ETA, exit toxic always. OD, one damn army. And that's all I'll ever need.